we actually understand that rescue comes from two places. One is the approach that there are disaster management trained teams in the country. Army steps in, and the states have their own teams, and then to some extent the police. They're all there. But the second aspect of the disaster relief comes from communities. Communities around a place immediately respond. And one of the best examples of this that we have seen is in Kerala, when I mean, they struggled for almost a month, and the first responders were the fishing folk. They took out their boats and started moving into, the roads were literally rivers, and they started rescuing people and bringing them to high ground. So it's the community plays a part in rescue, but we would urge that, as organizations, unless we are trained to do this, this is not something that we should attempt doing, except for, if you're seeing an immediate disaster that you're, right next in front of you. So what Bhumika does actually is, we have over the years, and especially starting with the Chennai December 2015 floods, we formed this immediate response team, which we call the help, the a kind of a helpline. It works 24/7. And in this age of social media, numbers tend to go viral, and in no time you'll have people calling you to update you on people who are stuck everywhere, and they need to be rescued. Now, this information we started collating and then verifying and geotagging the people and then passing it on to the authorities to help them rescue. So this kind of set a template for us on how to do it. We worked on Google Sheets then. And then we moved, when we came into the Kerala floods, again, we managed a remote team from Chennai with Malayalam speaking volunteers who were able we worked with the authorities in Kerala, and our experience of having done the Chennai floods came in hand. We helped them establish the Google Sheet practice, and also the geotagging, so that the process could get more efficient. So that is something that we started working on during the rescue. And I think this is one of the things that we can all improve the processes in this. Now then comes the relief, and relief is a very complex process. Now all of us react, and everybody is into relief generally, every individual, every household, because at that moment you're reacting with your emotions, and you are affected when you see what is going on around you. And so you step out with relief material and go and hand it over to a neighboring colony, and you're doing it all the time. But when it comes to an organization, the relief, while it is simultaneous, it is a little bit more calibrated. You need to figure out what kind of relief material is most suitable, especially when you take the Gaja cyclone, when the roof of most of the huts caught in that area flew away. It doesn't make sense for you to keep rushing, other kind of materials. What you need is to see that can you help them with something more critical. Like our team went in with tarpaulins and helped them to tie down the tarpaulins there so that they could have an immediate shelter. So things like that. So you need the response has to be, the relief also has to be thought about a little bit, and that comes with some amount of experience. I mean, let's take something like the migrants now. The migrants in Tiruvallur were very appreciative of the fact that we were actually able to provide them wheat flour. So it says, कैसे हम रोटी का ये चावल खा सकते हैं रोज. They were not used to that. That's not their culture. So then that's something that you start learning how to do this better. So relief is, and it's a very complex process, because our cities are overcrowded. The people in need are crowding you everywhere, and it's very difficult to bring in a system and distribute that relief equitably. You have to make sure that the relief that you start in the beginning of the road goes to the end of the road. You can't like stop midway. You have to be fair to every resident that you're approaching. So therefore there are certain formal processes that come into that, but we keep the processes very informal and minimal, but ensure always that you're reaching relief to the last person, last mile in each colony. And you also have to calibrate, relief has to be calibrated so much that when you are talking to 20,000 migrants, and if one migrant tells you that he has got 3 months old twins and he's suffering for want of, he's not able to buy baby food. Now, you have to have a system where that one volunteer is taking charge of that person and buying baby food every week till the migrant goes home or gets into a job. So therefore, it cannot be, one glove fits all. you have to achieve scale, but you also have to start personalizing relief to some extent. And from relief, let's talk about all of us. A lot of us respond and we provide relief, but rehabilitation is a more is a long term process. I mean, you'll be surprised to know that the 2015 December floods rehabilitation process is still on in our organization. One of the resettlement colonies in Perimbakam, we are still building a school for people who got relocated from the canal banks. So it is a long-term process where it largely involves the creation of infrastructure. It could be schools and building homes. We built 105 resilient homes after the Chennai floods. It's a very tricky process because you need to be sure about the government processes, getting permissions, ownership of land and all that. So rehabilitation is a little bit tough for most NGOs that are not very specific to disaster to get involved into. This is something that the government has to do, and some organization like us attempt to do this, trying to follow the rules and regulation. There are two other aspects to disaster, which I'm not sure we do that very well still, but that's something that we should all be thinking about, is that mitigation of disaster. Now that involves environment, and then taking care of your it's preserving your ecosystem and all that. That's not something that we have done so far. And again, about building resilient communities, this is something we're trying to do, like to be able to face disasters. We help people, the communities that we work with, to face disasters by
I'm so sorry, Aruna,
yeah,
but in the interest of time,
yeah,
we would like to ask you a question. If there are questions, and we will.
So can I take this to the empathy, and then we will get on to the questions. Vedika, give me another 2 minutes. Vedika, hello. Okay, I'm good.
I think Vedika's had a little bit of a tech issue, but please do take a minute.
Yeah. Let me just complete. So these are the stages of a
Aruna,
disaster.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. So I'm going to take another minute to get to the empathy factor, and then let me take this on the questions. Okay. Okay, I think we lost her again. So let's come to from the stages of this collaboration. I think collaboration is key. All of us have to understand that we can't reach everywhere, and you have to build partnerships. You have to build partnerships with NGOs. You have to build partnerships with government and volunteers. That's the most important thing. Like you have to have huge teams of volunteers, and you can't reach scale unless you have all these people around you supporting you. The local NGOs are the ones on the ground who can deliver better. And if you look at volunteers, they bring on. I mean, from there, I think I should move on to something called empathy. Now, when you set your processes, generally it becomes a little bit more rigid and scientific. But when you add on that element of volunteers into your system, they bring in that factor of empathy. What is empathy? Empathy is to be able to put yourself in another person's shoes and really look at what do they need. But we are making a decision on their behalf. So and sometimes this anecdotal evidence, and then empathizing that with that one person, you may not be making the best decision. So it has to be, I don't know if it is a dichotomy, but it is actually meaningful empathy. You have to every process, you may be reaching 20,000 people, 10,000 people, but unless that underlying element of empathy and then dignity of giving is part of the process that you build into your people, that you build in, volunteers naturally bring it. The first time volunteers bring it in tons and loads, and that actually helps us refine our system, because they're always much more caring than the system that we've already built. So I think that every process of this has to be laced with that element of empathy. So I'm going to stop here, and I think since Vedika wants to move on with questions, I'll be happy to take on questions.
Thank you so much, Aruna. I think our next panel is also waiting for us. If it's okay, we can send you the questions that we have gathered. We have questions slowly coming in. I have a couple myself.
Yeah.
We will be circulating a document to all of our participants that has the summary and the key takeaways from each of our speakers. So if it's okay for us to take these questions offline, we would be much obliged.
Yeah, sure. Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us, Aruna. This has been an interesting context setting for the Kural 2020, the times that all of us have spent the last 3 months sitting in our houses. I think it's important that all of our organizations start thinking about how disaster prepared we are and how we can become disaster prepared and how our communities can do so as well. So thank you so much. It was lovely having you. I hope you will stay on to be a part of our other panels as well.
Yes, sure. Thank you.